Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation of What's Out There, a look at transition-related resources in Florida and beyond. My name is Lisa Friedman Chavez, and I work with Project 10, the Transition Education Network. This is the second part of a two-part webinar series highlighting secondary transition resources in the state and the nation. A reference guide has been developed to accompany this presentation, and it will be available via a link on the left-hand side of your screen.
My name is Joe LaBelle with Family Network and Disabilities, and thank you for joining us today. In this presentation, we're on Facebook Live. We're going to be sharing with you these different resources of what's out there in Florida and beyond, but we wanted to make sure that the information is accessible to you. So after this presentation concludes, we're going to come off camera, we're going to go back on camera, and then we're going to be having a separate question and answer section for you to be able to ask us questions about these resources. We're going to be answering questions that you guys are asking during the presentation, and then this presentation is going to be archived here on the FND Facebook page, on the Project 10 website, as well as the FND website. Lisa, what's the Project 10 website?
www.project10.info.
And for FND, that's fndusa.org. And you can again find a link on the left-hand side of your screen to our first section of this webinar that we had done last year, as well as the resource guide. So thank you for joining us, and let's get started.
The presenters for today's webinar are myself. As I said, I'm Lisa Friedman Chavez. I work with Project 10, the Transition Education Network. I am a regional transition representative. We also have Kathy Powell from Family Network on Disabilities, and Kathy is the program director of the Parents of the Panhandle Information Network, also known as POPIN. And Joe introduced himself, but Joe LaBelle is also with Family Network on Disabilities, and he is the statewide director of Programs Impact. Next slide, please. And this presentation was developed by the Family Involvement Subcommittee of the Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, also called BEAS, State Secondary Transition Interagency Committee, in collaboration with Project 10 and also Family Network on Disabilities. Next slide, please. The goal of the transition-related resources presentation is to assist participants in identifying available resources and how to access those which are specific to the student's needs. Next slide. After this training, you are going to be able to identify a variety of resources for individuals with disabilities related to post-secondary education and training, employment and benefits planning, understand the transfer of rights and resources related to guardianship and decision-making alternatives, describe a variety of educational opportunities and community resources to support secondary transition, and just wanted you to be aware that the presentation is divided into different sections, and those sections are going to include information specific to each topic, and following each section there will be a description of different resources. Next slide. As Joe had referenced when we did the introductions, there was a part one of this resources webinar. In part one, which did take place on April 6, 2017, it covered information and resources regarding the secondary transition process. So some of those topics were the definition of transition services. We're going to cover that again today. It's important for everyone to have that background. Parent engagement in the IEP and transition planning meetings, family support for increasing student self-determination, distinguishing the difference between accommodations and modifications, high school graduation options, deferral of receipt of the standard diploma, and also many, many resources throughout that entire presentation. And as Joe had mentioned, you can find that webinar on the FND website, and the link is to the left of your screen. Next slide, please. And for today, we have part two of this webinar series on resources, and we are going to be talking about resources related to post-school options and activities in the following areas: post-secondary education and training options, resources related to building work skills and planning for employment, benefits planning, the transfer of rights and decision-making alternatives, community resources, educational opportunities for parents and other stakeholders, including the Student Circle of Support, and finishing the presentation, we're going to be talking about a few specific agencies, organizations, and discretionary projects. Like Project 10. Next slide, please. We talked about this in the first webinar, but I think it's important to mention it again. But what exactly is the definition of parent? The Florida Department of Education defines parent as either or both parents of a student, any guardian of a student, any person in a parental relationship to a student, or any person exercising supervisory authority over a student in place of the parent. And that definition includes foster parents. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware when we're talking about parent, who all is included in that specific definition. Transition services are based on the individual child's needs. It takes into account the child's strengths, preferences, and interests, and may include the following. Instruction. Instruction is basically formal instruction in school, home, or the community. That would include community-based instruction, travel training, academic and career technical education courses, self-determination and self-advocacy training, as well as extracurricular activities. Related services are transportation and developmental, corrective, and other support services that would help a student benefit from instruction. Some examples of related services might include counseling services, occupational and or physical therapy, speech language pathology, assistive technology services, or a particular assistive technology device, and also transportation would be included as a related service. In regards to community experiences, these would be participation in activities outside the school building, and that would include community activities such as recreation, using public transportation, as well as shopping. Employment involves activities that prepare a student for employment, for something related to a career, such as career education, development of good work habits, technical skills training, guided practice in school and community work situations, career placement, supportive competitive employment, and on-the-job training. Post-school adult living, we want to make sure that we're preparing our students for their roles as adults. So some of those things would include helping them to be able to participate more fully in the community, understanding about renting an apartment, paying for bills and budgeting, filing for insurance, voting, and also getting along with others. If appropriate, the IEP team will also identify needed transition services in the areas of daily living skills and functional vocational evaluation. Daily living skills are activities that teach a student daily personal needs. That could include preparing meals, grooming, as you mentioned, budgeting, and being as independent as possible. A functional vocational evaluation is a very comprehensive evaluation. It collects information on a student's career interests and aptitudes. Not every student is going to need a functional vocational evaluation. And transition services may be addressed through the development of measurable annual goals or short-term objectives, or in other sections of the IEP. Next slide, please. Transition services facilitate school to post-school activities in areas such as education, employment, adult education and services, independent living, as well as community participation. These services are based on the individual's needs, including their strengths, preferences, and interests. We're going to be focusing on resources to support successful transition to some of these post-school activities during today's webinar. Next slide, please. And last but not least, it's important to remember that there is no such thing as a special education student. Students with disabilities are general education students. They may or may not be receiving special education, and special education supplements the services and supports available to all students. It does not replace these services.
It's important to remember that your child is going to be graduating to something. So it's not just graduating from high school, they're actually graduating to something, the next step, the next path, and it's our job to help them figure out what that is. So IEP teams might want to use a blank weekly agenda to begin the discussion regarding what is your student's day going to look like after they walk across that stage for graduation, for high school graduation. Is it going to be post-secondary institution? Is it going to be starting into a career opportunity? Is it going to be career and technical? What is that going to look like? But having a physical agenda can really help us with that visual planning. Now, perfect. Now, some of the post-secondary options are universities and colleges, employments, career and technical centers, living arrangements, recreation and leisure, and community services. So let's break down what some of those are. Now, universities and colleges, a university and college, things to consider. Is it close to home? What are some of the admissions criteria? What programs do they offer? Do they have a disability support center? And if so, what is that like? What levels of support are they able to offer? Now, the state university system is comprised of 12 universities throughout the state of Florida. Universities offer associates or 2-year degrees, 4-year bachelor's degrees, as well as master's and doctorate degrees. The Florida college system comprised of 28 community and state colleges. Community colleges typically offer associates or 2 years degrees and certificates. State colleges offer 2 years degrees, bachelor's or 4-year degrees and certificates. So those are definitely something that we want to be aware of. Are we going to go straight to a community college, a state college, or a 4-year master's, post-secondary, or graduate degreed university? So what is that path going to look like? And again, the things I want to think about when we're planning a transition IEP is, what is the student interested in, and what programs align with those interests? Now, another option is to go straight into employment. Visiting employment sites and speaking with workers, exploring through online resources, participating in paid or non-paid work experiences, volunteering, participating in disability mentoring days when they're available. So really understanding what that job is and how it might fit your students' needs, wants, interests. And then we're going to be talking a little bit later about how to disclose that they have a disability, but that's a really big factor when it looks at universities, colleges, employment, career and technical, all of these options. Disclosure is extremely important, and we'll talk a little bit later about how to do that and what that looks like. Career and technical centers, researching what career and technical vocational program are available and the entire requirements. Visiting those schools, visiting those locations, and getting a good understanding of what are the final exams that you have to pass with any of those programs, what are the boards or the state level exams that you have to pass. One of the things when I was looking at, I have a disability, I have a learning disability, I had an IEP my entire life. And, when I was looking at what path I wanted to go down with a post-secondary program, I was looking at all the different programs that TCC, Tallahassee Community College, and FSU, Florida State University, offered. And I really had to narrow down what programs I would even be eligible for because of the disability that I have. And I say that because my learning disability manifests itself specifically in mathematics and language comprehension. So I wasn't going to be entering into a program into the College of Math. I wasn't going to become a math teacher because that was something that A, didn't interest me, and B, the requirements were just way over my head. So those are all things that you want to consider and be aware of, and making sure that your students' strengths align with the programs that you're going to be entering into, or that they'll be entering into. So post-secondary education training and options. The next few slides, we're going to review some resources related to post-secondary education and other training options. Now, there are many options to explore in regards to post-secondary education and training. The state university and colleges are required to provide accommodations for students with disabilities under the Americans with Disabilities Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. Private institutions of higher education must also provide accommodations to students with disabilities. These accommodations are to assist students with disabilities to have equal access. So there's the big key, equal access. It's not going to look the same as an IEP. It's going to make sure that your students with disabilities and students with disabilities, if you're a self-advocate out there watching this video right now, making sure that you gain equal access to the courses, to the coursework, to the lectures and everything else that's being provided as a part of your tuition and your experience at that university. In addition, there are some private institutions of higher education that are geared specifically for students with disabilities. For example, Beacon College, which was the first college in the nation to be accredited to award bachelor's degrees exclusively to students with learning disabilities and ADHD. The college offers academic and personal supports services to help each student achieve his or her goals. However, it is a private university, and the costs are significantly higher than state universities or colleges. So, we don't have to necessarily go to a private university that is geared specifically at students with disabilities. Many students with disabilities are thriving on a daily basis inside post-secondary environments, but it's all about that disclosure. And again, we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Career and technical education centers offer a variety of certificate programs such as welding, automotive, cosmetology, agriculture, culinary arts, and more. So when we talk about career and technical education, we're talking about those vocational programs. And I think that my generation and younger has really gotten this perception that vocational programs are not something to aspire to. And that's just not correct. We need vocational programs, and a lot of vocational programs make really good money. So looking into some of those programs that are more hands-on learning, I learn best. One of my learning styles is when I am doing, not when I'm just in a lecture hall listening to a professor. And let's be honest, that is what a university setting is like, is sitting in a huge lecture hall, listening to professors about, interesting subject matter, but it's not hands-on. So if your student is really learning better with hands-on, talking through the process, interactive experiences, maybe looking at some of those vocational programs and career and technical centers are going to be a better path to go down. Students with intellectual disabilities may want to consider exploring post-secondary comprehensive transition programs on college or university campuses. These programs include life skills, social skills, employment skills, academic skills. Some programs offer on-campus housing. Some offer a summer residency program with focus on building independent living skills. So it's important to check out what those different options are. In Florida, there is the Florida Consortium for Inclusive Higher Education, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But really, those are programs geared at students with disability or students with intellectual disabilities, for them to be able to attend college and universities, which are typically non-accredited programs. Many communities offer non-credited community classes. These classes offer students the opportunity to learn and enhance their skills and meet new people, which they could potentially lead to employment connections in the future. Some common community educational classes include photography, various types of dancing, art, learning new languages, fashion, etc. Now, as I mentioned previously, it's important for students and their families to understand the diploma options and students' course of study. It's a student taking courses with a modified curriculum, also known as access courses, will most likely encounter challenges if planning to attend a four-year university and obtain a degree. Families should assist their children in researching different technical vocational programs in colleges and universities. What are the requirements? What support is available for students? Whenever possible, schedule visits to see the program. So that's really important to me. This is not a single player game. Being able to move towards a vocational school, a Florida college or university takes a lot of work. And coming out of high school, we don't know, as students, we don't know what that process is. And as the parent, if you've not attended college yourself or university yourself, or maybe you went to a university but not a technical school, you might not know the process either, but you'll at least have a much better opportunity to help guide your student and know what questions to ask and find the answers. So really, I encourage you to help make that a priority for your student, set the expectations high so that they know that they have value and worth, and that they're going to be able to achieve more than graduating from high school to your couch. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for those high expectations, but they're going to need your help along the way. They're going to need your help leading to what we're all looking for is independence. Post-secondary education is costly, however, financial options are available. Families should work with their child to find out the cost of programs, research requirements, pros and cons, and different financial options. So when I was looking at colleges right out of high school, or when I was still in high school, I thought I was going to go to basically a vocational school, a photography college, and I was going to be a photographer. I love photography in high school. I had actually applied to several colleges, and then I saw the cost. The cost was prohibitive for the programs I was looking at. So instead, I went to Tallahassee Community College and then Florida State University. I worked on the FSU newspaper my freshman year, still at TCC. I worked in the TCC newspaper, both as faux journalists. And then when I went to FSU, I started working for the county newspaper, and then I was even working for AP Press on several of their events that they were covering down in the North Florida region. So, again, if cost does become a barrier, find other ways to tie those same interests into programs that are an option for you and your family. As discussed with self-determination, it's important for individuals with disabilities to know their strengths and needs. They should also be aware of what strategies have been helpful and what methods they should avoid. Assistance may be available from agencies. Scholarships should also be investigated. So that's really, really important for individuals with disabilities to know their strengths and their needs. I think one of the things that I was struggling with most in my experience was not having been prepared enough during my IEP meeting, and then all of a sudden all of the adults at the table looking over and saying, "Okay, Joe, what do you need to be successful in math?" Well, I'm not sure, because we haven't had that discussion before. So start now. When you're at your child's IEP meeting, before your child's IEP meeting comes up, talk about their strengths, talk about their weaknesses, talk about their preferences of learning. So do they like to learn hands-on? Do they like to learn by lecture? Does their anxiety spike when they have to read aloud? That's a learning preference. So we can work with the teacher so that they don't have to read aloud, and that way they'll process the information better. So what is their learning preference? And then what are their interests? What do they want to do? Help write those out so that when they do come to the IEP meeting, they can be an active participant. Those skills are not just for the IEP meeting in elementary, middle, high school. Those skills translate to career technical centers, colleges, universities, but then in the workforce. So how are they going to advocate for themselves once they get into the workforce? And if they don't know what they're good at and what they need help in, and they just keep focusing on their deficits, they're never going to be able to advocate for themselves in a productive way. Now, it's important to also talk about disclosure of a disability. The importance of disclosing a disability will be discussing in greater detail in the upcoming slide, so hang tight for that one. Since 1975, the Board of Governors, along with the state university admissions directors, have offered free workshops around the state in order to meet with middle and high school guidance counselors. At these workshops, directors explain admissions philosophies, policies, and procedures so that counselors can better meet the needs of their university-bound students. This website also includes comprehensive PowerPoint about each institution. So really take a moment, review this information. It's offered for free, and encourage your guidance counselors to attend. Now, disclosing a disability and requesting accommodations. So there is really a big difference between high school, college, university. There's a difference between high school and then college and university. So in high school, you're protected under a couple things. So there's child find, and child find is pre-K through high school, you're protected under a few different things. So child find is one of them. So if a student is struggling and teachers and administrators can see, hey, this student might need some additional supports, they might have a disability, they're going to bring that up and they're going to encourage an evaluation. And same, if the parent recognizes that this student is struggling, they're going to encourage an evaluation and see if that student qualifies under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. If the student has been identified as being a student with a disability and qualifying under IDEA, then they'll start receiving services through an IEP, Individualized Education Plan, which I'm sure many of your students already have if you're attending this webinar. Now, the IDEA laws, which are a set of federal laws, they protect students up till they graduate from high school. So up till they graduate from high school. It guarantees a free and appropriate public education. So those are really the fundamentals. It provides, there's funding behind IDEA for different related services. There's a lot of different things that IDEA provides for students, but there's going to be minimum at least one IEP meeting a year. You can request more, but there's going to be built-in supports into that IEP that inherently come under IDEA. Now, when you get to a college or university, that's not the same case. Just because you had an IEP in high school does not mean it's going to follow you. What needs to happen when you attend a college, career and technical center, or university is you have to disclose that you have a disability. So that means that you have to go to the Disability Resource Center. You have to let them know, I had an IEP in high school and I have a disability. Or if you've developed a disability, whether it's physical or otherwise, then notify them at that point. But you need to be the one that discloses it. You need to be the one that is able to prove that you had a disability. Some colleges and universities will accept the IEP as either proof of a disability or provisional proof, and then get tested and evaluated as an adult with a disability. And then there are some disabilities that they will be able to just recognize. So those are all things that we want to consider. Now, when I was in the university setting, I had to go to Tallahassee Community College. I had to be evaluated as a student with a disability. I was able to substitute courses, which a lot of people don't know that you're able to do. So I was able to demonstrate that my disability manifested itself in mathematics and languages, and I worked with my Spanish professors, and I'll be talking about that in just a little bit. But I also worked with the math department. I received additional accommodations, but I had to be that driving force. None of my professors were saying, Joe, your IEP says this. I didn't have an ESC specialist at the university that was saying, Joe, how are you doing with this? How are you doing with that? Let's set up a follow-up meeting. I didn't have any of those supports. So again, the burden was on me to be able to disclose that. So post-secondary educations and training is a statewide resources. The State University System of Florida Board of Governors website contains a webpage specifically to students with disabilities. The website reminds readers that students with disabilities are welcome on all campuses throughout the state university system. If students with disabilities wish to receive accommodations while enrolled, they should contact the Student Disability Office at the university. Links to the individual university offices are listed directly on the website. The webpage also contains information regarding different scholarships, which is need-based scholarship programs for undergraduate degree-seeking students with disabilities. So really take a moment and look at the links that we have on this slide. Post-secondary education and training statewide resources. Florida Shines post-secondary education and training preparation, PSET toolkit. Florida Shines is a free resource to all students in Florida. Students can create online profiles and take assessments, which could be useful in exploring potential career options. There are templates to assist students in creating and formatting a resume, cover letters, thank you letters to employers for students who are planning to attend college. There are many resources to help students compare different options. The National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, NTAC, which is actually something that Family Network Disabilities is involved in at the federal level as your statewide PTI, Parent Training Information Center. There are toolkits in this toolkit is intended as a resource for any students with disabilities, family members, service providers, or educators of students with disabilities to consider options and plan PSETs, which are post-secondary education and training preparations, to access and succeed. So check out those resources as well. Now, post-secondary educational and training statewide resources, post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities, Think College, Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, and Florida Consortium on Inclusive Higher Education. I'll run through those real quick. All three of these programs are geared at facilitating and assisting students with intellectual disabilities to attend post-secondary university programs, which again are typically non-accredited. There's a growing movement sweeping the country which increases access to institutions of higher education for students with intellectual disabilities. Think College is a national organization dedicated to developing, expanding, and improving inclusive higher education opportunities for persons with intellectual disabilities. Think College supports evidence-based and student-centered research and practices by generating and sharing knowledge, guiding institutional change, informing public policy, and engaging with students, professionals, and families. The purpose of the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities is to support students, families, and institutions of higher education so that students with intellectual disabilities have opportunities on campus and colleges to experiences that lead to employment opportunities. The Florida Consortium on Inclusive Higher Education website is designed to provide information on Florida's inclusive college programs for students with unique intellectual disabilities. It is intended for students with intellectual disabilities and their families and post-secondary programs and staff, teachers, and instructors. So really the Florida Consortium for Inclusive Higher Education website is a resource for everyone to access. The Florida Consortium is made up of universities from across the state of Florida, colleges and universities that have post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities, and they offer a wide range of options for students. Some have housing, some do not, some have summer housing, some do not. So really just like degree-seeking tracks, you want to understand all options. There is a cost to the Florida Consortium for Inclusive Higher Education to some of those programs. So what is the cost? Can you take out financial aid? Is there housing? Is there not? Where's the closest option? So all of those things are things to be considered. Project 10's website has an entire section dedicated to post-secondary education, which includes topics such as post-secondary education, supporting post-secondary youth, financial planning for post-secondary education, identifying post-secondary options, programs for youth with significant disabilities, applying to college or programs, disclosing disabilities and requesting accommodations, resources related to a post-secondary education for students with disabilities. So I want to share a real life story. Now, like I said, I have a learning disability. It manifests itself in mathematics and languages. So there's two quick examples I want to give. Now, when I went to TCC, I had an experience. I had two different experiences. The first experience I had was in math. And in math, I had to start out taking remedial math. And in remedial math, it was, I believe, 3 remedial courses before that I had to pay for before I could even start taking credited math classes. And the credited math classes I had to start out with were the very, very lowest, and I had to get all the way up to Algebra 1. Now, that's prohibitive. And I say that because my disability is in mathematics. So what I worked out with the Disability Resource Center is I was able to identify and demonstrate that I was reevaluated as an adult with a disability. It manifests itself in mathematics and languages. So I was able to demonstrate that math was a hindrance in my disability. My disability was a hindrance in my ability to pass those math courses. So we were able to do some research, myself and the Disability Resource Center, and we found out that I could do course substitution. So I attempted the first 2 math courses, the first 2 remedial math courses. I barely passed them, and then I was able to do to swap out courses, math for additional science courses. And I was able to, again, make that work, and it was greatly successful. But I had to advocate for myself. I had to be willing to do some of that research on my own in conjunction with the Disability Resource Center. And I had to be aware that there were additional options out there. I could have let that stop me in my path, but I didn't. I kept going.
Let's begin with the Individualized Education Program, also known as the IEP. A student's IEP must include a post-secondary goal in the area of employment, as well as a career goal by the time he or she is 16 years old. The IEP team will develop annual goals and coordinate agency linkages to support the student in attaining the identified goals. So the following slides will highlight some activities that may assist in promoting successful employment, as well as discussing some employment-related services, and talk about the importance of employment. Robert F. Kennedy was quoted as saying, "The purpose of life is to contribute through work and other aspects of life." So everyone, including individuals with disabilities, are able to contribute through work and other aspects of life. Employment helps people with disabilities participate more fully in all facets of society, including economic and social aspects. So you might be thinking, how can families help to promote employment? Well, employment is a natural expectation for most individuals in the community and should be supported for students with disabilities. And there are different ways that families can help to promote employment. They can start by assisting in the exploration process, the exploration of career interests, for example, through hands-on activities or observations and resources. And there are many online resources to assist in identifying these career interests and preferences. You may also hear them referred to as career tests or maybe inventories or assessments, but these help youth gain a better understanding of career interests, motivational traits, personal work styles even, personality, values, skills, and aptitudes. Families can also introduce their student or youth to people who do various kinds of work, and discussing their job duties is another great way to assist. And they can learn and help expose students to work experiences, both paid or non-paid. And there are different kinds of work experiences that include internships and apprenticeships, service learning, volunteering, on-the-job training, and community-based vocational education. And each community does have a variety of supports and services. Some of this supports, for example, are services such as Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or VR, which you'll hear more on in a little bit. Also, high school high-tech programs, along with mentoring programs, were available. Now, many students and their families do fear a loss of benefits if the student begins earning a paycheck. Just know that all counties do have supports for benefits planning. The Workforce Incentive Planning and Assistance Program has community work incentive coordinators throughout the state. Families may also contact their local Social Security Administration, their area work incentive coordinators or work incentive liaisons for more information regarding benefits planning. But don't worry, more information regarding benefits planning will be shared in this presentation and future slides. And also remember, this presentation will be archived on the Facebook page for you to refer back to. Also, in addition, the Project 10 website has a section for district resources related to employment. And visitors to the website can select the county they're interested in and see what is available and who to contact for more information. The website is included in the resources section at the end of this presentation. Employment first. Florida is an employment first state, which according to the Association of Persons Supporting Employment First means that employment in the general workforce should be the first and preferred option for individuals with disabilities receiving assistance from publicly funded systems. And some key points of interest here. First, the Florida Abilities Work Portal help desk was developed to assist job seekers, employers, and stakeholders. Also, an interagency cooperative agreement was signed by 7 partners, and these 7 partners include the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, the Florida Department of Education and Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services. I know it's a mouthful. The acronym is Florida Department of Education's BEES. Vocational Rehabilitation, the Division of Blind Services, the Department of Economic Opportunity, the Department of Children and Families, Mental Health and Substance Abuse Programs, the Florida Developmental Disability Council, along with Workforce Florida. And note, anyone can join the Employment First Grassroots group. And this is an actual screenshot of the homepage for the Florida Abilities Work website. And the Abilities Work Help Desk serves employers and job seekers, again, with disabilities in navigating the disability support system, and also links employers to qualified workforce. Now let's look at paid employment options. And I want to read a definition of a competitive employment. And this is according to the regulations of the Office of the Department of Education, and Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services, and the State Vocational Rehabilitation Services. The term competitive employment means work in the competitive labor market that is performed on a full-time or part-time basis in an integrated setting, and for which an individual is compensated at or above the minimum wage, but not less than the customary wage and level of benefits paid by the employer for the same or similar work performed by individuals who are not disabled. Next is customized employment, and this is a flexible process designed to personalize the employment relationship between a job candidate and an employer in a way that meets the needs of both. It's based on an individualized match between the strengths, conditions, and strengths of a job candidate and the identified business needs of an employer. Customized employment utilizes an individualized approach to employment, planning, and job development, so one person at a time and one employer at a time. Next is supported employment, and according to the Agency for Persons with Disabilities best practices in supported employment in their pre-service training guide, supported employment facilitates competitive work in integrated work settings for individuals with the most severe disabilities, for whom competitive employment has not traditionally occurred and who, because of the nature and severity of their disability, need ongoing support services in order to perform their job. And then last on this slide, supported employment provides assistance such as job coaches and transportation, assistive technology, specialized job training, individually and individually tailored supervision. And it's a way to move people from that dependence on a service delivery system to independence via competitive employment. Recent studies indicate that the provision of ongoing support services for people with severe disabilities significantly increases the rates for employment retention. Supported employment encourages people to work within their communities and encourages work, social interactions, and integration. And note now, some individuals may be interested in what's called adult day training or ADT programs, or you might have heard of them called sheltered workshops. These are not integrated employment options, and often, if payment is offered, is at a sub-minimum wage. Now, I'll elaborate some more on work experience for both paid and unpaid. As I mentioned earlier, there's apprenticeships, internships, job shadowing, and volunteering. We'll start with apprenticeships. An apprenticeship is an agreement that includes a paid work component and an educational or instructional component, wherein an individual obtains workplace relevant knowledge and skills. Registered apprenticeships are high-quality work-based learning and post-secondary earn and learn models that meet national standards for registration with the U.S. Department of Labor or federally recognized state apprenticeship. And note that registered apprenticeship training is distinguished from other types of workplace training by several factors, and there's 5 of them. The first is the participants who are newly hired or already employed earn wages from employers during training. The second is that programs must meet national standards for registration with the U.S. Department of Labor or federally recognized state apprenticeship agencies. 3 is that programs provide on-the-job learning and job-related technical instruction. 4 is on-the-job learning is that it's conducted in the work setting under the direction of one or more of the employer's personnel. And last, that the training result in an industry-recognized credential. Next is internships. An internship is an official program offered by an employer to potential employees. Interns work either part-time or full-time at a company for a certain period of time. Interns can be paid or unpaid, though if they are unpaid, they're usually subject to stringent labor guidelines in the U.S. Federal law, and there are mandates that unpaid interns must not benefit the company economically or be used to displace the work done by paid employees. And some states have their own regulations regarding interns. So, for example, in California, unpaid interns must receive college credit for their work. Most American internships are work experience internships, essentially on-the-job training in a field that the student or young worker wants to learn more about. So you may ask, so what is the difference between an apprenticeship and an internship? Well, the main difference between the two is that internships are more exploratory. And you're not bound to work for your employer after the internship is over, although many interns do receive job offers. And if you start early enough to do a few internships throughout college, you can use the first ones to get a feel for what career you'd like to pursue, and then the later ones to build your experience. Yet another work experience is your job shadowing, and this is an educational program where college students or other adults can learn about a particular occupation or profession to see if it might be suitable for them. In job shadowing, a business typically partners with an educational establishment to provide an experience for a student of what it is like to perform a certain type of work by having them accompany an experienced worker as they perform the targeted job. And last, but such an important one, volunteering. And volunteering is a wonderful way to give back to the community and often a way for students to connect with others in their community and potentially find a lead to future employment. However, it is not paid employment. Next is employment resources. As you see on the slide, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities is often referred to as APD. We'll be discussing it more in detail later on this presentation, but however, we wanted to note that the APD website has a page dedicated to supported employment. This web page also includes information regarding the Employment Enhancement Project, EEP, which is available to APD customers who are on the Medicaid waiver waitlist. The Customized Employment Competency Model document has multiple sections. The document first describes customized employment, also known as CE, as a concept, for example, how the practices of CE differ from those of other employment strategies, and then as a process, and that is the 4 essential components of CE. And the CE components and the tasks within each component are displayed, including a diagram that illustrates the 9 CE competencies. And what's great is that the competencies are presented along with the knowledge, skills, abilities, and other characteristics that make up each competency. And there's also some recommended ways in which the model may be used. And there's the Florida Developmental Disability Council, or FDDC, with a whole section dedicated to resources. One of the resource categories is employment, which includes the Let's Get Everyone to Work resource toolkit for students with and families, and the marketing toolkit for employers, and the teaching toolkit for pre-service professionals. And last is Florida Shines on this slide. Florida Shines provides an array of academic advising, career readiness, and distance learning resources for students and parents. And these state-funded academic advising services assist high school students to prepare for college and or career after graduation by enabling them to evaluate their progress towards high school graduation, college and career readiness, and scholarship eligibility. Within the Florida Shines website is a section to help students find a career. Students can take these assessments and see which career cluster would be most appropriate for them based on the results. And they can also explore various careers, job openings. They can also create resumes and cover letters using the website's templates. Here's another slide of employment resources. One of the main section of the Project 10 website is employment, and it's divided into 3 subcategories. There's accommodations and considerations, which focuses on helping students with disabilities access the supports they need to achieve their employment goals. There's career development, which focuses on helping students with disabilities to develop a career pathway that reflects their personal interests, skills, and aptitudes. And then there's job search, which focuses on helping students with disabilities to search for a job or find a job and even keep a job. Then there's the United States Department of Labor website, which also has a wealth of employment resources. There's a section regarding apprenticeships under the Office of Disability Employment Policy, or ODEP, which also falls under the U.S. Department of Labor. And ODEP is the only non-regulatory federal agency that promotes policies and coordinates with employers and all levels of government to increase workplace success for people with disabilities. And then there's skills to pay the bills, mastering soft skills for workplace success. And that is a curriculum developed by ODEP focusing on teaching soft skills or workforce readiness skills to youth, including youth with disabilities. And it's created for youth development professionals as an introduction to workplace, interpersonal, and professional skills. The curriculum is targeted for youth ages 14 to 21 in both in-school and out-of-school environments. And the basic structure of the program is comprised of modular, hands-on, engaging activities that focus on 6 key skill areas: communication, enthusiasm and attitude, teamwork, networking, problem solving and critical thinking, and professionalism. And the curriculum is available for download in English and Spanish. And my favorite piece are the accompanying videos. They're really fun. This slide lists a few of the employment-related agencies and organizations within the state of Florida. We'll be discussing CareerSource Florida and the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or VR, in coming slides. But many people are familiar with Goodwill thrift stores, but they may not realize the variety of employment services available through Goodwill Industries. Supports and services may differ across the state, but the link on this slide is to the main webpage regarding finding jobs and accessing services. And the last link on this slide is Volunteer Florida. Volunteer Florida is the lead agency basically for volunteerism and national service in Florida. They administer almost $2 million in federal, state, and local funding for national services and volunteer programs across Florida. Volunteer Florida administers national service programs like, for example, AmeriCorps, which offers Floridians the opportunity to engage in intensive service to their community while increasing capacity for nonprofits and other service organizations. Volunteer Florida's grantees include schools, educational foundations, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and other community organizations. CareerSource Florida supports businesses and job seekers. Each CareerSource area officer has a disability program navigator, and the local career centers have disability coordinators. They have a statewide network of career development professionals who work directly for Florida employers to find, develop, and keep qualified talent. They also offer a wide variety of supports and services to job seekers throughout their career and youth services. This slide highlights just a few of the supports and services available to job seekers. Some school districts are collaborating with CareerSource offices to present students as part of the curriculum. Many CareerSource representatives participate in the transition interagency councils and transition resource fairs, so check with your local CareerSource office to see what supports and services are available. Next is Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, or VR. VR is a federal state program that helps people who have physical or mental disabilities get or keep a job. VR is committed to help people with disabilities find meaningful careers and has a variety of programs, including their Transition Youth Service program. The VR Pre-Employment Transition Services, under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, also known as WIOA, pre-employment transition services must be offered to students with a disability without requiring them to apply for or be determined eligible for these services. WIOA established VR as the primary agency for preparing youth with disabilities for employment while the youth are still in high school, including being able to access services while pursuing VR transition youth services, and help students with disabilities train for a job, continue their education, or find a job after high school. Under this program, every youth will have the opportunity to participate in sponsored career counseling, work readiness training, and fully integrated work experiences in the community. These services establish the foundation for a seamless transition to individualized training, education, and employment. And the following are included in VR pre-employment transition services. That's career exploration counseling, work readiness training, self-advocacy training, post-secondary educational counseling, and community-based work experiences. Work-based learning experiences. These serve as stepping stones from the world of learning to the world of work. And in the 2018-2019 school year, school districts will have the opportunity to become VR vendors and implement work-based learning experiences. And students must be between the ages of 14 and 21 in school and have documented disabilities. The WBLE services must be new, expanded, or a continuation of services previously delivered through a VR third-party cooperative agreement. WBLE may not be used to supplant existing school programs or services. Some of the services that may be offered under WBLE are included in the following slides. So, what can be included in this plan and agreement? Well, each student may have up to 4 WBLE plans per year, and each plan will be unique to the student. Plans must be approved by a VR representative and include an employer. Some possible activities to consider when developing a WBLE plan include a pre-employment transition service, hands-on learning in a real work environment, a work behavior and skill development, self-esteem and confidence boosters, resume and relationship builders, job shadowing, career mentoring, informational interviews, and paid and non-paid internships and work experiences. Additional services available under VR, as mentioned in the previous slides, VR pre-employment transition services are limited. Some students may need to access additional services such as assistive technology or supportive employment if additional services are needed. Students would need to apply for the traditional VR program and be determined eligible. And then once eligible, the VR counselor will work with the job seeker to develop an individual plan for employment. I want to share a story. My son Sam has actually given me permission to use his name and talk about his work experience working for a local thrift store here in town. Sam was 15 years old, and the plan was to connect him with VR, vocational rehabilitation, probably at the age of 16, and take advantage of all that is offered, especially helping with any work behavior and skill development, along with some self-esteem and confidence boosters. And Sam had and has still has difficulties with emotions with his autism, so I really wanted to make sure to get him lots of supports through that supported employment when the time came. But the right time came without really planning for it. We just happened to be shopping for his favorite items in the world, VHS tapes, at a thrift store. He collects them and probably has, well over 600 tapes in our bonus room, which he now calls his Blockbuster room. So while shopping, I had noticed a small sign. It said, hiring individuals with autism. And basically I stopped in my tracks. Sam had no resume, and we hadn't truly discussed career interests at that point yet. Well, he may have wanted to be a train conductor for Thomas the Train, or maybe a professional Lego builder, but I hadn't done any real cool career inventories with him yet. Or maybe they did at school, but I had not seen anything come home. I didn't know if working here gave him access to job shadowing. I didn't know whether it would be strictly a cash register job, or if it was an internship or even paid work. But I did know one thing. I knew that motivation would be key for Sam. Otherwise, there would be you would see behaviors. So after speaking to the owner and inviting Sam over to talk with him that day, the owner learned very quickly about Sam's passion for all things VHS. And he said, you know what, give me a week and he'll have a better idea of how to motivate Sam into work. Just give him some time to think about it. So I didn't give it too much thought, but I did remember to call out of curiosity the following week, and the owner had created a job around Sam's very interest. Sam was to be their VHS tape processor. So they created a workstation in the back room that included a TV and a VHS tape player, and then a separate VHS tape rewinder. Then he had like a large bin of unprocessed tapes and a second bin for broken tapes, because Sam is already great at finding those. And even a third bin for taking those processed tapes out to the floor. And I'll never forget how proud he was that first day of work. He had his employee shirt on and he was headed to the back room. Well, me, being mom, started to follow him that first day, mainly out of curiosity for whether he would, chat with his fellow employees. It was kind of like the first day of preschool for me all over again. But he stopped me right there and pointed at the door, and he said, "Employees only, Mom." He's been there almost a year, and he continues to process tapes with some added jobs of checking in books and hanging clothes and sweeping, and he does want to learn the cash register. And the great thing is it's a paid job, and he's working, one day he is working up to more hours, but now he can afford to buy those rare VHS tapes on eBay without breaking the bank, because he spends his own money, and he's very proud of spending his own money.
This section highlights some essential information and resources about benefits planning. Next slide. You can see by the title of the slide the importance of benefits planning. I can't really stress enough how critical it is. Many students with disabilities do receive financial benefits from Social Security Administration, also called SSA. This could be Supplemental Security Income, more commonly known as SSI, or Social Security Disability Insurance, that's called SSDI by most folks. In addition, some students may be eligible for Medicaid based on their income. Paid employment really could affect these benefits. However, there is free support available to assist with benefits planning, and I'm going to be discussing a few of these benefits planning resources on the next slide. This slide does feature a list of agencies and resources about the topic of benefits planning, and we're going to be going through each one with a little bit more detail. The Social SSI and SSDI disability programs are the largest of several federal programs that provide assistance to people with disabilities. While these two programs are different in many ways, both are administered by the Social Security Administration, SSA, and only individuals who have a disability and meet medical criteria may qualify for benefits under either program. The Social Security Administration's Red Book serves as a general reference source about the employment-related provisions of Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, and the Supplemental Security Income, SSI programs for educators, advocates, rehabilitation professionals, and counselors who serve people with disabilities. The Red Book is updated annually, and it includes information about work incentives. Some of the work incentives that are really important for students to be aware of are the student earned income exclusion, and there's also impairment-related work expenses. Both of those would be included in the Red Book. We also want to talk a little bit more about work incentives planning and assistance, more commonly called WIPA. This program the purpose is to enable beneficiaries with disabilities to make informed choices about work and to support working beneficiaries to make a successful transition to self-sufficiency. Each WIPA project has what's called a Community Work Incentives Coordinator. We like acronyms, those are often called CWICs. And those CWICs will provide in-depth counseling about benefits and the effect of work on those benefits, conduct outreach efforts to beneficiaries of SSI and SSDI as well as their families who are potentially eligible to participate in federal or state work incentives programs, and work in cooperation with federal, state, and private agencies, as well as nonprofit organizations that serve individuals that are receiving SSI and SSDI, the beneficiaries. Please do note that the first bullet on the slide provides basic information regarding the WIPA program itself, and the second bullet on the resource slide will assist in locating your local WIPA provider there throughout the entire state. The Changing Face of Benefits includes a self-paced workbook as well as an online course. It was created to provide individuals, families, and professionals with basic information about SSDI, SSI, and Medicaid and Medicare benefits, information to support informed decision making, and programs and services available to help people with disabilities move towards financial success. The workbook is downloadable and can be accessed in English and in Spanish. Successful completers of the online course may also apply for continuing education credits, those CEUs. And it's just important to note that benefits planning is a paid service also available through vocational rehabilitation vendors, but individuals must be clients of VR in order to access that particular service. So they can provide it, they do have providers throughout the state, but you do need to be a VR client in order to access it. And benefits planning, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is very important. It's important to understand, and it can be a little bit complicated, but the good news is that there are many free resources that would be available to assist in making those decisions.
Transfer of rights and decision-making alternatives. When a student turns 18, the age of majority, the state of Florida considers the student to be an adult with all the rights and responsibilities associated with that role. Some students may need decision-making assistance when they legally become an adult. There are multiple options, and it is very important for families to understand and explore these decision-making alternatives prior to the student reaching the age of 18. We will share some experiences and resources that are available to assist. Additional note, when developing the IEP to be in effect when the student turns 17, the student must be informed of their rights that will be transferred to her at the age of 18, and a notice of transfer of rights must be provided to the student and parents when the student obtains his or her 18th birthday. Most importantly, families should prepare themselves to accept their child in his or her new adult role and allow their children to take active roles in the decisions that will determine their future. So, support decision making. There are many different decision making options to consider, such as support decision making. One of the decision making alternatives is commonly referred to as support decision making. It is an alternative to guardianship. The Family Network on Disabilities is able to provide information regarding support decision making and other decision making options. More information regarding FND is included later in their presentation. So it's really important to understand that it's not all guardianship. So often we hear it's guardianship, and that's not the case. There are options like support decision making that help identify members of family or friends or trusted individuals that the student can turn to for major life decisions and options to help just kind of tease out and pull out different options and understand truly what that financial, health, education, employment options look like without having their rights completely taken away by someone else. So FND does provide information, resources, presentations, conferences on support decision making, and we're happy to explain it to you at any point. Now, the Florida Developmental Disability Council has many resources regarding guardianship and other decision-making alternatives. Some of these include the Lighting the Way Guardianship and Other Decision-Making Alternatives Manual, online courses and fact sheets. The manual aims to increase the knowledge of individuals with disabilities and their families about various ways under Florida law to provide decision-making assistance, including guardianship advocacy and guardianship, how to access the legal system when it's necessary to address it in the manual. It's also abbreviated resource title, Lighting the Way to Your Choices, Your Decision, and Your Life. 3 resources on the slides pertain to legal information relevant to individuals' disabilities during the secondary transition. The Florida Bar features a legal guide for new adults pamphlet, a PowerPoint presentation, and 32-page manual. Planning Ahead publication sponsored by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration and the Developmental Disabilities and the Florida Developmental Disability Council covers many important topics for young adults, such as using government benefits, estate planning, and legal ways of protecting rights, among others.
We have all probably heard the popular phrase, "It takes a village to raise a child." And that sentiment is very true when it comes to secondary transition for students with disabilities. It's important for students, their families, and their supports to know what resources are available in the community as well as how to access them. Next slide, please. Some agencies have actually created community resource guides. Many of them are available digitally and have search features. This slide just lists a few for you folks to reference. So the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, often called APD, has an online resource directory which covers the entire state. And people can enter their zip code and a radius or their county, and you can do a search for various service providers through that particular search function. Also, the Department of Elder Affairs has a quick online resource guide and also resource guides by county. And each Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resources System, many people refer to them as fiddlers, the regional offices have a local resource guide. In the past, these resource guides were available by hard copies and also online. Most offices now are moving more towards the electronic copy. It's easier to update that way, but those have a lot of great resources in them. In addition, the Florida Information Referral Service, which is the acronym is FLAIRS, and the Florida 211 Association is available 24 hours a day and is a source of information of over 40,000 local health and community services in Florida. It's comprised of an online database, and residents can also pick up the phone and dial 211 to get local assistance. If a telephone service provider does not connect when a person dials 211, you can use the phone number of 1-866-728-8445. The Project 10 website also has a section which lists resources by district. The main categories on our website are local school district resources, employment resources, college and university resources. For the college and universities, we try to list their disability resource centers, local agency resources, and also student and family resources. I also know many transition interagency councils and school districts have created their own resource guides. So those are other resources to be on the lookout for. Next slide, please. Transportation, we mentioned this, it's huge. It's really important as far as our students becoming more independent, being able to access their community. And there are a few resources that I'd like to share with you regarding transportation in the state of Florida. So the first resource is the Florida Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged. The Commission's mission statement is to ensure the availability of efficient, cost-effective, and quality transportation services for transportation disadvantaged persons. Every county in Florida has a community transportation coordinator. They're sometimes called CTCs, and they can be located at the link that's included on the PowerPoint slide, also in the reference guide. Another great resource is Let's Go, a guide to getting around in your community in Florida. It is on the Florida Developmental Disability Council's website, and it's listed under Community Living Resources. This particular publication provides county by county transportation information, which includes specific services available in each county and contact information for the various transportation services in Florida. And you can go to the DD Council's website to download a free copy. Next slide, please. This slide, we have a few more transportation related resources. The first that you'll see on this slide is the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center. NADTC promotes the availability and accessibility of transportation options for older adults, but also people with disabilities, caregivers, and communities. The link is on the slide. The National Rural Transit Assistance Program, RTAP. Since its inception, National RTAP has developed and distributed training materials, provided technical assistance, generated reports, published best practices, conducted research, and offered peer assistance with the goal of improved mobility for Americans living in communities with populations under 50,000 people. And we know in the state of Florida, we have many, many districts, many counties that would fall under that category. Some of our smaller counties don't have public transportation. So it's a wonderful resource for our smaller communities to get more information. And last but not least, and I actually wrote down a note on this one, but the Bureau of Instructional Support and Community Services created a technical assistance paper in July 2001, which clarifies funding and transportation for students enrolled in exceptional student education programs who require specialized transportation. You can see on the slide what the name of that particular guidance paper is, but it's Transportation and Students with Disabilities. That's the name of the technical assistance paper. Next slide. Healthcare transition is defined as the purposeful planned movement of adolescents and young adults with chronic physical and medical conditions from child-centered to adult-oriented healthcare systems. It's really important to note, though, that the healthcare transition is important for all youth, especially those with disabilities, and it should be addressed as part of our students' IEPs, as part of the transition planning process. And healthcare transition and our health impacts so many parts of our lives. So it's really important to be aware that needs to be addressed. This slide contains a few resources related to healthcare transition. The first one is the Children's Medical Services. They're frequently called CMS for their acronym. And CMS has recently gone through a major restructuring as far as the supports and services that they provide. Actually took a couple notes about it, but CMS is a collection of programs that serve eligible children with special needs. CMS's programs and services are family-centered and designed to help children with a variety of conditions and needs. I know I've worked with CMS in different interagency councils. They reach out with the medical professionals. They also collaborate with school systems. So they are, and of course families and individuals, but they're a wonderful, wonderful resource to tap into. Another one is Florida Health and Transition Services. They are more commonly known as Florida HATS. And Florida HATS is a program of the Florida Department of Health Children's Medical Services. The mission is to ensure a successful transition from pediatric to adult health care for all youth and young adults in Florida, including those with disabilities, chronic health conditions, or other special health care needs. The Florida HATS website provides materials in multiple categories. Some of those categories include healthcare practitioners, youth and family, independent living, decision-making and guardianship, advocacy, juvenile justice, secondary and post-secondary education, insurance and financing, service delivery and models of care, and education and training for professionals. It's important to also note that Florida HATS has many different smaller groups that have formed across the state, and you can find their specific information on the website. They've also created some different products and resources that everyone would have access to, so that's available through the website as well. And they also have a complete healthcare transition curriculum that teachers and schools and school districts have access to, so that's definitely something to check out, and that's free. Project 10 also has a healthcare transition webpage, and through our webpage we provide various research and also some links to additional resources that would be relevant to healthcare transition. Next slide. And the next slide is going to be talking a little bit about mental health, and mental health has been gaining more attention in recent years, and it's extremely important to include mental health when planning for students' success, not only during school but also for post-school. This particular page provides a few different resources related to mental health within Florida. The first one is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Program, which is operated under the Florida Department of Children and Families. SAMHSA is the legislatively appointed state authority for substance abuse and or mental health issues. The program is responsible for the oversight for a statewide system of care for the prevention, treatment, and recovery of children and adults with serious mental illnesses or substance abuse disorders. The National Alliance, the next bullet is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They usually go by NAMI. NAMI has been around since 1979. Florida has a chapter, and there are also many local NAMI affiliates throughout the state. The purpose is to raise awareness and provide support and education on mental health. The group the group educates communities through the state affiliates and education programs. They also advocate for people with mental illness as well as for their families, and they provide a toll-free helpline as well as free referral, information, and support. NAMI is a leader in public awareness events and activities that fight the stigma and encourage understanding of mental health issues. And they have emergency resources including helplines, crisis text lines, and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Next slide, please. And Project 10, again, we do have a section on our website which addresses transitioning youth with emotional and behavioral health needs. Through that particular webpage, we have some information about bullying and some resources related to that. We also have research and links to additional resources and organizations that could be of assistance. The next bullet is on the multi-agency network for students with emotional behavioral disabilities. That's kind of a mouthful. They're known more commonly throughout the state as SEDNet. And SEDNet is a statewide discretionary project. They have 19 regional project managers who serve as a collaborative resource for school districts, agencies, and families working to promote positive educational and community-based outcomes for children with emotional behavioral disabilities. SEDNet currently focuses on the following 5 initiatives: capacity building to support implementation of effective system of care practices, technical assistance and training, interagency collaboration. I work with many of them on interagency teams, systems of care and educational legislation and policy, parent and youth development and involvement. And the following slide will highlight some of SEDNet's available trainings and services. It also shows the 19 SEDNet regions, so that way you can locate your SEDNet region in the state. So, next slide, please. So you can see some of the trainings, also some of the services, and it's a very tiny map. You can definitely see a bigger map on the website, but that'll give you a little bit better of an idea of how SEDNet is broken up across the state. And the project goals are to support and represent the needs of students in each school district, improve coordination of services for children with or at risk of emotional behavioral disabilities as well as for their families, increase parent and youth involvement and development with local systems of care, assist school districts in the development and implementation of policies, procedures, and practices concerning the use of restraint and seclusion, and facilitate student and family access to effective services and programs for students with and at risk of emotional behavioral disabilities. Next slide, please. Independent living that's one of the goals. We want our students to be exiting the school system being as independent as possible. This particular slide has a few resources related to students being independent and accessing their community as well. The first bullet is about local, county, and city parks and recreation. And our local county parks local county and city parks and recreation, they do provide a wide variety of community activities, and many of the offices actually have a complete division that's dedicated to supporting individuals with disabilities. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and you can check in with them. Some of them have calendars, some of them might have email distribution lists you can access. So that's definitely a resource to be aware of. Also, the Florida Association for Independent Living Centers, frequently called FASL, is an organization that provides support and resource development for 15 Centers for Independent Living throughout Florida. Centers for Independent Living, they're like acronyms, also known as CILS, are nonprofit agencies that encourage people with disabilities to be as independent as possible, and members share practices and ideas to promote independent living. We're going to be discussing Centers for Independent Living in more detail in a future slide. We've mentioned some of their resources, but the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council, sometimes called the DD Council or FDDC, has developed multiple publications related to community living, and the resources are provided in a variety of formats that could include handbooks, guides, manuals, research reports, audio and videotapes. So lots of great things going on there, and their resources are free. And the Florida Independent Living Council, which formed in 1999, is a non-for-profit statewide planning organization. The council is made up of 14 voting members. They're appointed by the governor, and the majority of the voting members must consist of individuals with disabilities who are not employed by a Center for Independent Living, one of those CILs, or a state agency. Next slide. And also, Project Tech, not to toot our own horn, but we really do try to provide, different resources related to transition. We do have a webpage about independent living resources. You can see it on the slide. We also have a topical brief back from 2015, which focused on independent living in Florida. Next slide. And moving from independent living into housing, which frequently is connected with independent living, there are many resources available regarding housing and trying to find affordable housing. I'm going to be covering just a few of those resources on the next two slides. The Florida Housing Coalition website offers information regarding housing news, housing advocacy efforts, and housing education opportunities available throughout the state. They also host an annual conference each year regarding affordable housing, and that conference is fantastic and features experts in the field. Also, the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. They're an important resource for organizations who are interested in developing housing. Florida Housing works to increase affordable housing opportunities and works with local governments, nonprofits, elected officials, and others to help spread the importance of affordable housing in Florida's communities. And it really is a big issue right now across the state. In some of the communities, it's really difficult to find affordable housing, so they're a great resource to help with that. Also, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there is FloridaHousingSearch.org. That was created a while back, but it's a web-based rental housing locator. It was created by the Florida Housing Finance Corporation and allows the public to search for affordable rental housing. In addition, they have a toll-free bilingual call center, and that's available Monday through Friday for those without access to the internet or who would like to speak with somebody. Last but not least, we have Residential Options of Florida. They go by Florida Roof. Or just Roof, and they empower individuals with developmental disabilities to obtain and maintain affordable, inclusive housing of their choice. The Roof website has a resource library for individuals, family members, care providers, and also housing professionals. They also operate a hotline during normal business hours that people can call, and they'll help them with accessing housing navigation services, and also they can provide more information regarding preparing for independence and housing resources within their local community. Roof also helps provide support to different communities across the state in case they're interested in creating affordable housing options. Next slide, please. And there's also mentioned the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council has created many different resources. They paired with Roof and created, you can see the screenshot, but Housing in Florida, a resource guide for individuals with developmental disabilities. It's frequently referred to as just the Housing Guide. The project was funded by the Department of Health and Human Services, Administration on Developmental Disabilities, and the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council, and Roof assisted with getting the information. The guide offers information on housing options, financing for each housing option, and home renovations. It provides a county-by-county directory of resources as well. It includes multiple real-life examples in which individuals with disabilities have been able to access affordable housing through various, blending and braiding of funding and services. Though some of the specific contact information might be out of date in that particular guide, it's a printed guide. The names of the agency can easily be searched online and contacted for inquiries regarding the resource availability. The housing guide can be accessed electronically through the Roof website, which is www.flroof.org, or through the FDDC website, www.fddc.org. And I believe that hard copies of the guide can still be requested for free by contacting the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council. I just wanted to share a couple of real life stories related to some of the topics we just discussed in this section. One of them is in regards to transportation, and there was a young lady I had the pleasure of working with who was part of a post-secondary program, and when she got into that post-secondary program, she did not know how to use any of the public transportation, completely reliant on other people to drive her around. And as part of the post-secondary program, they taught her how to use the local bus system, the local trains, how to do transfers. She could use the app. And by the time she finished the post-secondary program, she was really getting around her community independently. She had the opportunity to look for jobs that were beyond a pretty small radius because she now knew how to do the transfers and could access community to get to those jobs. And it also opened up her world to more community activities, getting together with others, and shopping, just a whole bunch of other opportunities. So highly, highly, highly recommend. Not just a recommend, it's something that should be done, but transportation and travel training, that's something that really needs to be looked at as far as helping our students transition successfully and being as independent as possible and accessing their community. The other story I wanted to share with you is more related to the importance of budgeting and financial planning. I have the opportunity to go around my region. I talk to multiple students, I talk to families, and also work with school districts. And a lot of our students want to live, independently and when they exit. And one of the pieces that they sometimes need a little bit of help with is the budgeting factor and what is truly needed financially to be able to meet their goals. We talked a little bit in the beginning about what transition is. And we are transitioning our students to be college, career, and life ready. And that life ready does include their living options. And so just want to make sure that everybody is, keying into that and the importance of budgeting, making sure that our students understand it and are building up those skills as part of the transition process as well.
Florida has an amazing amount of educational opportunities for parents, others, and community partners. So the following slides will highlight just a few of those. We'll start with the Association of People Supporting Employment First, APSE, Florida chapter, and they host a statewide conference annually. Some years they have sponsored their own conference, and other years they have collaborated with other community partners. In April of 2018, they partnered with SEDNET and the Vocational Rehabilitation, along with Department of Children and Families, to sponsor the Making Wellness a Priority, Healthy Minds and Healthy Futures conference. Then there's the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities, commonly known as CARD. They sponsor an annual conference which provides access to persons with autism spectrum disorders, ASD, their families and professionals evidence-based information that promotes best practices in education, early intervention, and quality community-based lifestyles for individuals with autism, deaf and blindness, and related disabilities. Then there's the Family Cafe Conference, which brings Floridians with all types of disabilities and their families together for 3 days of information, training, and networking opportunities. And this happens each June. The conference is free to persons with disabilities and their families, and it offers a great range of individual breakout sessions, a packed exhibit hall with dozens of vendors, and a series of special events, including a keynote speakers, and the Governor's Summit on Disabilities. The annual Family Cafe offers families exposure to a range of public and private resources on a grand scale, opportunities to find support by networking with other families, and unprecedented access to policymaking officials. Next is the Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resource Systems, also known as FIDLERS, Parent Services. They offer information, training, and support to districts and families in order to promote effective parent participation in education of children who are exceptional and or have special needs. Parent Services includes assistance in the development of family-friendly programs, training and support for services for children with disabilities, and the supportive partnership between schools and parents to support student achievement. Next is Family Network on Disabilities, FND, the agency Joe and I are with. FND was founded in 1985 by a group of parents of children with disabilities who came together for mutual support and information sharing. They are the Florida Statewide Parent Information and Training Center, and more information about FND will be presented in the next few slides. However, it is important to note that they offer regular training opportunities throughout the state, including webinars and Facebook Live sessions. The mission of the Learning Disabilities Association of Florida is to create an environment that supports, informs, and empowers individuals with learning disabilities throughout their lifespan. For a list of training resources and conference, please visit their website. Next is Project 10. Has divided the state into 5 regions. Each region has an annual Winter Institute, which is free, an all-day event, and information regarding the institutes are posted on the What's New webpage, part of their webpage. Then there's Promising Pathways on the Road to Best Practices in Autism Spectrum Disorders, and it's a national annual conference which takes place in Fort Myers every April. And the conference registration is free and includes breakout sessions, also a keynote speaker and exhibitor tables. So next, this slide will identify and review agencies, organizations, and projects that serve as resources to families. And so more on FND. Again, we are a nonprofit agency that manages programs funded by the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Special Education Programs, also known as OSEP, that provides parent training information, which is your PTI services, to the state. There are 3 regional parent training information programs that serve families through FND. They include the following: the Parents of the Panhandle Information Network, which is POPIN, in the North Florida Panhandle from Escambia to Volusia County, and I am the POPIN program director. Then there's Parent Support Network, PSN, in Central Florida, and then Parent Education Network, PEN, in South Florida. These PTI services help to ensure that parents of children with the full range of disabilities have the training and information they need to prepare their children for not only school, but to be able to lead productive, independent lives to the fullest extent possible. And the purpose of the program is to ensure, through collaboration, that individuals have full access to family-driven support, education, information, resources, and advocacy, and to serve families of children with disabilities, ages 0 to 26, who have the full range of disabilities described in the Individuals with Disability Education Act, also known as IDEA. And this map illustrates the 3 parent training and information centers that we continue to serve. Okay. Also, there are 2 community parent resource centers known as CPRCs in the state of Florida. They are described as following. There's Parent to Parent Miami, and that's is a community parent resource center for families of children and adults with all disabilities. It's located in Miami, Florida, and this program serves families in the Miami-Dade and Monroe counties, as well as the nation. With the help of Parent to Parent of Miami's specialized team, parents and professionals can find information, workshops, and other resources to help make decisions about early intervention, early childhood, education, vocational training, employment, college opportunities, and as well as the laws that protect the rights of children and adults with disabilities. There's also the Empowerment Parent Resource Center, known as EPRC, and it serves Escambia County, Santa Rosa County, Okaloosa County, and Walton County in the Western Panhandle area of Florida, with plans to expand further east as the EPRC develops. EPRC is constructing a comprehensive website that helps to link parents to web-based services and trainings, a calendar of upcoming trainings, an ongoing need assessment to constantly update resources, to identify needs, and resource specialists that respond to phone calls and emails to provide individual support services. Next is the Access Project, which provides evidence-based instructional resources to support teachers who are taking general education curriculum through access points. Access points are aligned to Florida standards and help to make the general education content relevant and accessible to students with a significant cognitive disability. There are instructional resources in the core area of math, English language arts, social studies, and science, as well as webinars and support to implement the Marzano framework for students with significant disabilities. The Access Point project provides statewide professional development for teachers and also supports Florida Standards alternative assessment activities. The Agency for Persons with Disabilities serves the need of Floridians with developmental disabilities by partnering with local communities and private providers to assist individuals with developmental disabilities and their families. The agency's goals include the following: to increase access to community-based services, treatment, and residential options, to increase the number of individuals with developmental disabilities in the workforce, to improve management of the agency and oversight of providers. APD provides the following services: the Medicaid HCBS waiver throughout iBudget Florida. And please know that there is currently a waiting list for the Medicaid waiver, so contact your local APD office for more information. Also, placement in an intermediate care facility for those with developmental disabilities, along with supported living services through supported living arrangements. Many of these individuals, even those with severe disabilities, are able to live in their own homes, even control their lives and become part of their community. Also, Consumer Directed Care Plus, which is CDC Plus. And then IFS, which is Individual and Family Supports, and that funding is for non-waiver customer expenses. Then there's Supported Employment Services, and then the Employment Enhanced Project, also known as EEP. And the purpose of the EEP is to provide supported employment services to individuals on the APD Medicaid waiver waiting list to find and maintain competitive employment and participate in meaningful internships that have a high likelihood of resulting in competitive employment. So for each person who participates as a job seeker in the Employment Enhancement Project, APD allocates funds to provide the following services: supported employment, coaching to secure a good job match, supported employment follow-along services to help retain the job, assistance with transportation needed for work, and securing paid internships as pathways to competitive employment. Individuals meeting the criteria in any Florida county may be considered for participation in EEP. EPD eligibility. To be eligible for services from the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, an individual must be a Florida resident and have one of the following 7 developmental disabilities: autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disabilities, Down syndrome, Prader-Willi syndrome, Phelan-McDermott syndrome, or spina bifida. Children ages 3 to 5 who are at a high risk of developmental disabilities may also be eligible. And there are 6 APD regions in the state of Florida, and many of them have local field offices. The APD application is available online or from one of the regional or local field offices. More on APD, on Employment Enhancement Project, and some key points. It was renewed for agency fiscal year 2016-17, July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2017. EEP funds are $500,000 statewide. They were $1 million last fiscal year. Students with disabilities 18 years or older may qualify for funds. The average is about $2,500 per person, and funds may be spent by June 30th, 2017. And you can contact your local APD office and ask for employment liaisons. The Center for Autism and Related Disabilities, CARD, provides information and training to help individuals with autism spectrum disorders, ASD, and other related disorders and their families. There are national resource centers that serve the state of Florida. The CARD website can help individuals locate the center closest to them. CARD serves individuals of any age with the following: autism spectrum disorders, autism disorder, pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified, which you'll hear called PDD-NOS, Rett's disorder, Asperger's syndrome, and childhood disintegrative disorder. Also, related disabilities would include deaf and blind, hearing and vision impairment, hearing impaired, or vision impaired with other disabling conditions. Family members, friends, and professionals, the referrals are accepted from parents, legal guardians, medical professionals, school and community agencies, and consent to obtain and review records will be necessary. CARD is able to provide information about an individual's disability. They can also refer families to federal, state, and local services, service agencies, and find support groups. They can support families in planning for the future. They can consult with school personnel, provide training sessions on how to work effectively with individuals with autism and related disabilities. There's also online modules. They can provide consultation to caregivers and professionals on how to best work with an individual with a disability. Next is the Florida Department of Children and Families, or DCF, and that is the state agency that has the job of looking out for children and protecting them from abuse and neglect. The scope of DCF is wide-touching on needs of children from many angles, and some of the services offered include food assistance, temporary cash advance, Medicaid, refugee assistance, abuse hotline, and that number is 1-800-96-ABUSE, adoption, foster care, and child welfare. The Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. The DJJ's guiding principles are prevention and education, which are paramount, strengthening partnerships with judicial, legislative, and community stakeholders, and promoting public safety through effective intervention, along with providing a safe and nurturing environment for our children, preserving and restoring physical and mental health. The Office of Education collaborates with the Florida Department of Education and local district school boards to ensure implementation and compliance with applicable state and federal law, rules, and regulations of programs for youth served in DJJ settings. And the Office of Education is committed to ensure youth served by the department are afforded the opportunity to obtain a high-quality education. The DOE and DJJ each designate a coordinator for juvenile justice education programs to serve as the point of contact for resolving issues not addressed by district school boards, and to provide each department's participation in the following activities. The first is training, collaborating and coordinating with the Department of Juvenile Justice, district school boards, educational contract providers, and juvenile justice providers. Whether state operated or contracted. Also collecting information on the academic performance of students in juvenile justice programs and reporting on the results. And then last is developing academic and career protocols that provide guidance to district school boards and providers in all aspects of education programming, including records, transfers, and transition. And this slide includes a variety of resources related to DJJ, a webinar, Project 10 topical brief, and links to the DJJ Office of Education, along with the Florida Juvenile Justice Foundation. The Youth Investment Award is available through the Florida Juvenile Justice Foundation and can help youth served by DJJ pay for tuition, school supplies, transportation, and other things needed to help achieve academic and career goals for the Department of Juvenile Justice.
Disability Rights Florida is a statewide designated protection and advocacy system for individuals with disabilities in the state of Florida. Disability Rights is a nonprofit corporation that has authorized authority and responsibility under 8 federal grants. Their services are free and confidential. You can see their website listed below, disabilityrightsflorida.org. Again, more on Disability Rights Florida. Available services are information and referral, self-advocacy support, technical assistance, investigation into complaints of abuse, neglect, rights violation, dispute resolution support, negotiation and mediation support, advocacy services, and much of the staff of Disability Rights are attorneys. So areas they do not cover are anything not related to individuals with disabilities, bankruptcy, criminal court, criminal law, family law, financial assistance, including direct cash, utilities, phone bills, others, property taxes. They do not cover guardianship, identity theft, landlord-tenant, malpractice, mortgage foreclosure, personal injury, probate law, property law, Social Security, disability determinations, or wills. So those are the things that they do not cover. So Centers for Independent Living, 19% of all Florida's residents have a disability. That number may seem high, but remember that not all disabilities are visible. So the CILs, Center for Independent Living, are federally mandated under Section 725 of the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, as amended in 1998. They are funded with federal and state dollars and through local community grants and private donations. CILs fall under authority of the Florida Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and serve as pre-employment readiness component to that program. CILs are represented through the Florida Association of Centers for Independent Living, FASL, and as advocacy and support organization. Centers for Independent Living, CILs, empower persons with disabilities to take charge of their lives and guide through their own destinies. In addition, CIL staff, boards, and consumers work together to remove barriers and prejudice in society so that all individuals can live and work and enjoy all that the community has to offer. 51% of staff and board of the CILs are persons with disabilities, which means that they play a significant role in the decision-making responsibilities of the center. CILs serve all ages of children to seniors. Every Florida county is served by one of the networks, both urban and rural. Contact information for local centers for independent living may be accessed through the Florida Association of Centers for Independent Living website. So you can see this great map illustrating where all of the different CILs are located. And I really encourage you to reach out to some of your CILs. Centers for Independent Living and our organization, FND, Family Networking Disabilities, works with many of our CILs throughout the state. We sit on several of the boards of the different CILs. They've sat on our boards. It's a great collaborative relationship, and we really encourage you to reach out and find out what some of the services are that they provide. Now, going into some of the 4 core services: information referral, independent living skills, peer mentoring and networking, advocacy, and then each CIL also offers unique services tailored to the needs of its community, including but not limited to home modification, equipment loan and repair, computer skills training, recreational activities, and community events. Other CILs initiatives include youth transition from school to work and independence, accessibility services such as home modification, community education on accommodations, nursing home transition division, pre-employment services, employment services, crime victim advocacy, recreational activities, support groups, loan clauses of durable medical equipment, and interpreting services. Now, Fiddlers, the Florida Diagnostic and Learning Resource Center. I am such a fan of Fiddlers. Fiddlers, the Florida Diagnostic Learning Resource Center, provides diagnostic, instructional, and technical support services to districts exceptional education programs, and families, students with disabilities. There are 19 associate centers that directly serve school districts in the area of child find, parent services, human resource development, so HRD, and technology. What is child find? Child find involves screening and identification of children birth to 5 in need of services of who are at risk. Services can coordination and diagnostic screening, placement, and training is also provided. Parent services includes assistance in the development of family-friendly programming, training, support, building partnership between schools and parents. FND does a lot of great work with fiddlers across the state, helping to support one another with different trainings that we offer, collaborating on conferences, webinars, parent support, one-on-one information dissemination. So they're a great resource across the state. You can see the fiddlers map. You can see how they're broken up into the 5 different regions. So again, fiddlers will be a great place to reach out to, fdlrs.org, and you can reach out to your individual fiddlers. There's also the Fiddlers Multidisciplinary Centers. So as mentioned in the previous slide, there are 6 different regional Fiddlers Multidisciplinary Educational Services in Florida that are funded through the state Florida Department of Education under Bees to serve Florida's at-risk children and youth, their families, and schools. Multidisciplinary centers provide a range of services, including screenings, accommodations, mentoring and counseling, interventions for children and youth, educational, emotional, behavioral problems, and other risk factors for students. So I'd really recommend, again, you taking a moment and looking at some of the different links and websites that the different Fiddlers Multidisciplinary Centers are a part of. They are housed at Florida State University, Kaiser University, University of Florida Gainesville, Jacksonville, University of Miami, University of South Florida. Then we have FIN. I am such a fan of FIN. FIN is the Florida Inclusion Network. It provides services to schools and districts to increase inclusive practices for students with disabilities in general education classrooms and other natural settings. FIN services are provided by a number of factors who have experience and expertise in planning and implementing inclusive practices at schools and district level. FIN facilitators are organized into 5 regions and work in partnership with districts and schools within the specific geographic areas. Region 1, Region 2, 3, 4, and 5. FIN facilitators serve districts and schools by developing and increasing opportunities for meaningful inclusion of students with disabilities. Services provided to schools and districts are identified through all of the collaborative problem-solving processes focused on increasing outcomes for students and increased opportunities for inclusive environments. When contacting their support and assistance, FIN can provide families a variety of different information and resources, and upon request, contact the district's Exceptional Student Education office or the school to discuss concerns on behalf of the family. Family concerns and needs are always carefully considered as part of FIN's planning and problem solving with the district and or schools. While FIN facilitators do not attend IEP meetings, they can provide information about the following: effective inclusive practices, family-school collaboration and communication, opportunities for networking with other families, and ways to access local resources. So please make sure you're checking out the FIN website, which is on this slide, FloridaInclusionNetwork.com. FND works with FIN consistently, and they are a great ally and resource to be able to tap into.
All right, so back to Project 10 and a little bit more information about us. But Project 10, the Transition Education Network, or more commonly known as Project 10, we are Florida's statewide discretionary project supporting secondary transition of youth with disabilities. We're funded by the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services within the Florida Department of Education. And our primary charge is to assist school districts in providing appropriate planning and timely transition services and programs to assist youth with disabilities in their transition to adulthood. We also serve as a collaborative resource for other state agencies, discretionary projects, nonprofit organizations, and families in the provision of transition services for students served in exceptional student education in ESE. Our mission statement is to assist Florida school districts and relevant stakeholders in building capacity to provide secondary transition services to students with disabilities in order to improve their academic success and their post-school outcomes. Next slide. Project 10 has 4 major initiatives. These have been our initiatives since our inception in 2009. The first is capacity building. Project 10 will provide support for transition activities implemented through BEES, specifically through the statewide development and implementation of evidence-based practices in alignment with general education initiatives. The project will also collaborate with others in identifying and implementing methods for improving transition outcomes of youth with disabilities. And Project 10 will provide training and technical assistance. This includes product development and dissemination to assist school districts and other stakeholders in building capacity to implement secondary transition. Our second initiative is interagency collaboration, and we provide funding. We provide funding every year to help support Project 10 Connect. We also provide logistical support for developing and maintaining state and district level interagency activities, and we identify recommended practices in transition-related interdisciplinary and interagency collaboration and partner and collaborative activities. All of the regional transition representatives, there are 5 of us in the state, we all participate in the interagency councils that are in our regions that we serve. The third initiative that we have is on transition legislation and policy, and Project 10 provides training and technical assistance, again including product development and dissemination related to state and national legislation, State Board of Education rule and policy, and this includes compliance requirements to transition stakeholders. We actually have a section on our website to help share this information and make it readily available for folks as well for the transition legislation and policy. And last but certainly not least, student development and outcomes. And Project 10 provides training and technical assistance, again with the product development and dissemination to transition stakeholders in the areas of assessment and instruction, student-centered planning and self-determination, independent living, including recreation and leisure, post-secondary education and training, career development and employment. We also support exemplary transition sites that model the use of evidence-based practices of student development and improving transition outcomes. These initiatives drive the training, technical assistance, and resources for personnel throughout the state who are working to improve future success of students with disabilities. And we also support transition initiatives developed through the BEES strategic plan. And that strategic plan is being developed, a new one. They have them every 5 years. Next slide. I alluded to the fact that we have 5 regional transition representatives. We usually refer to ourselves as RTRs. I am the RTR for South Florida, but you can see how the state is divided. We also have the yellow is no longer TBA. We just found out today. We have someone new that has been hired, and that information will be available on our website if you are in the Panhandle area in Region 1. We also have a statewide juvenile justice liaison. Her name is Carla Green, and her contact information is on the screen as well. Last but not least, we also have, one of our things that we do, you heard when I talked about our initiatives, we have a lot of products that we develop. These are just 2 of the products that we have available on our website. We have a section actually dedicated to publications, but the first that you're going to see is a secondary transition roadmap for families that is available in English, in Spanish, and also Haitian Creole. And the second one that's on the slide is the Family Guide to Secondary Transition Planning for Students with Disabilities. The complete guide, you have the link. There's also a toolkit which is available through a Padlet that includes all of the items in the appendix of the Family Guide, and that includes self-determination checklists and some other checklists. It has a transition services checklist, which goes all the way from age 14 through age 21, a list of acronyms, lots of great resources, including what to expect as far as changes for the transition IEP. Next slide. I mentioned about discretionary projects. The Student Support Services Project is also another discretionary project, and that exists to develop and promote the implementation of a statewide system of comprehensive, multi-tiered supports for all students across Florida. It includes providing leadership and expertise related to the social, emotional, behavioral, mental, physical health, and safety of all students to engage in effective academic and behavioral instruction and interventions. The Student Support Services Project provides policy and legislative analysis. They also provide statewide leadership development, technical assistance and training, and they develop, promote, and support innovative practices for student services professionals and other educators to coordinate systems and improve student outcomes. Next slide, please. Arts for All, which formerly was known as VSA Florida. Even prior to that, they had another name, but they're another discretionary project, and the mission of Arts for All Florida is to provide support and champion arts education and cultural experiences for and by people with disabilities. Their vision is to create a world in which the arts are universally accessible, and their activities include conducting art education programs in schools, the Department of Juvenile Justice facilities, as well as community centers. They promote the accomplishment of artists with disabilities through their arts registry, exhibitions, as well as performances. And they also increase access to the arts through professional development workshops, and that happens across the state. Additional programs offered by Arts for All include the Artists in Residence programs, Florida Young Soloist program, Student of the Month program. Nominations are available online for that particular program. They have monthly webinars. The topics do vary based on teacher requests, and they also have Educating for All free workshops for teachers. Arts for All is headquartered at the Davis C. Onken Center in the College of Education, the University of South Florida, but they do provide statewide support. They're a statewide discretionary project. Next slide. These are just a few additional resources that are still very important. We did want to just do a quick shout out to the Florida Division of Blind Services, often referred to as DBS. DBS helps blind and visually impaired individuals achieve their goals and live their lives with as much independence and self-direction as possible. In addition, they have transition services for students transitioning from school to work or post-secondary education and training. The aim of the DBS transition team is to assist the student to reach their goals for adulthood and achieve the maximum degree of independence. And you can see on the slide there is a link to DBS. Also, the Florida Center for Inclusive Communities, FCIC, supports individuals with developmental disabilities and seeks to improve access to educational support. Some of their programs include services to individuals with autism through the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. They're collaborative on discovery and innovation and employment, and also FYI Transition. Those are just a few. The FYI Transition program is of particular interest to students transitioning from school to post-school life, and it's a website portal that's designed to assist students with making decisions regarding their direction for the future. That particular site includes web courses, student learning games, family social networking, interactive animation, a discussion board, and also success stories. The Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services had 41 discretionary projects in 2018. The goal of all these projects is to support the work of these in carrying out their mission to ensure the achievement of each and every individual's extraordinary purpose by expanding opportunities through collaboration of families, professionals, and communities who guarantee the highest expectations and individual success. Each discretionary project has unique focus with services to a variety of educational stakeholders in Florida, and the list of projects provides a brief description of each project and includes website and contact information.
So we want to thank you for joining us today. You know, working as a collaborative team is what it's all about. And we appreciate you coming to the table as an educator, a parent, a community partner, learning about resources that are in our community, that are working at a state level for the best outcomes for our children across the state of Florida. Partnership and parent involvement are what it's all about, and it takes a team to be able to make this happen. So thank you for being here today.
I want to reiterate how much we appreciate you being here, and we all wanted to wish you the best of luck in this incredible journey. And transition truly is an incredible journey. It's a wonderful process, and we just all the best wishes to all of you. And the next slide is a reference slide talking about some of the things that we discussed during the course of the webinar today.
And then the last slide, again, thank you so much. Now, at this point, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We're going to close down this Facebook Live, and in about 5 minutes, we're going to start a new Facebook Live that's just going to be question answers. So we're going to field questions from around the state, from that are inside the comment section. So if you have any questions right now that you want us to answer, please type in your question inside the comment section. We've been monitoring that this entire time, and we'll be posting this video again, remember, on the Project 10 website, which is
www.project10, that's the number 10.info.
And then it'll also be on the Family Network on Disabilities website, F as in Frank, N as in Nancy, D as in David, USA.org. And then again, you'll see a link on the left-hand side of your screen that you've seen this entire webinar. It's called a bit.ly link, and that's going to have part 1 and after this, part 2, along with the resource guide. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.